Okay, this is April 19th, 2016. This is Dr. Barry Redmond. I am working with a Zoom session tonight for EDLS 702 LZ and 702 L2Z. We did a Zoom last week on child nutrition and covered what a typical audit of a school district might encompass. And tonight I'd like to finish work with child nutrition using the Public Schools of North Carolina website regarding child nutrition. So I have that on the screen in front of you. And I'd like to point out a number of features that will help you as a school district leader, particularly a superintendent, who needs to have a firm grasp of what your child nutrition director would need to take care of. So those of you that work in North Carolina, which is the majority of the class, are probably familiar with this website. Your director of food services certainly is, but we'll take some time tonight just to refresh your memory perhaps. Or for some of you who aren't in leadership principalships yet, you probably don't have an awareness of any of this. And then for our class members in South Carolina, I would assume you have a similar type support system in place with your state resources, but if not, you can certainly see what North Carolina provides and then practice your influence on your state level resources. You'll notice across the top of their website there's a number of program areas. And I want to start out with this one here that says who we are and look at their mission, values, and vision. And what I would point out to you is that they have a strong section on values, and if you're going to be a good leader, you have debated that issue in your mind already of what are my values, what drives my decisions, what is going to help me make decisions in any type of leadership role. I like their set of values, and I hope that's a set that your child nutrition people adhere to. But let's take a quick glance at that. The Child Nutrition Services section of North Carolina values personal and professional integrity in all that we say and do, service to school nutrition personnel, innovation that makes positive change, leadership that inspires and endures, courage to do the right thing regardless of the consequences, perseverance to ensure that profit neutrality or profit generation never takes precedence over the nutritional needs of children, and accountability to ensure compliance with all federal and state regulations and policies of the State Board of Education, and high program standards that contribute to the developmental and academic success of students. I find these values extremely motivating and impressive, and it looks to me like the leadership at school food service at the state level has a strong commitment to doing things well. I'm especially mindful of their statement, courage to do the right thing regardless of the consequences. That's noteworthy, especially in the political climates in which we work today. So I would encourage us as leaders ourselves to adopt a similar type of values in our leadership. I think it's important to know that these type of values have guided their search for excellence in what they do and has likely propelled their efforts in all the areas that you'll see today. So I wanted to make sure that you saw their mission, vision, and value statement the first thing. I want to go ahead and look at several things this afternoon. First of all, let's go to the hazardous section regarding food awareness and food preparation. This stands for Hazard Analysis Critical Control Points. Obviously, you know, just from a practical standpoint in your own home, that food has to be prepared correctly, stored correctly, number of checkpoints, and where you could identify practices that are essential to keep children safe when they are partaking of the school food service menus. So it tells you here that USDA, the United States Department of Agriculture, requires that all schools have in place a food safety plan that's based on the process Hazard Analysis Critical Control Point, or short HACCP principles. Schools that do not meet this mandate are in jeopardy of losing their federal funds. So in North Carolina, They've identified 4 types of school food service operations. Here they name those: commercial kitchen, home stock kitchens, transported and catered meals. Some of you have a centralized prep area, then central warehouse. Each of these types of operations have a specific HACCP plan. So please familiarize yourself with this area, understand what it's about in terms of keeping food safe for consumption, and trying to eliminate any kind of hazard to our students. That's important. I've mentioned procurement in the past, so let me go to that section real quickly. A number of school districts in the state belong to this procurement alliance. What it amounts to is a larger group of purchasers that come together. Each 70 or 80 of the 115 school districts in the state join this collective alliance, and they buy in volume so that they get a much better price on what they secure. And we all know that the school food service is a standalone free enterprise. They have to provide monies for the purchase of their materials, their equipment, the payment of their staff, etc. They're not intended to be a for-profit organization, but neither are they intended to lose money. So let's look briefly at who we are for the procurement. They will tell you here it was formed in 2008. Their mission is to work in a voluntary partnership to procure high-quality, reasonably priced foods and supplies that enhance the health, well-being, and academic success of students enrolled in North Carolina traditional public schools. If you read down further, it talks about district membership based on mutual agreement between the school district and the NCPA. The group serves as a conduit for purchasing over 1,800 different types of products. Of course, they look at specifications and per unit cost, and that's the main focus, is trying to save money while ensuring high quality products. So this talks about the program, and you may understand, especially if you're from North Carolina, the state's divided into 8 regions. And so they divide the work of their procurement alliance. Regions 1 and 8 make up their audit committee. Regions 2 and 5 make up the product testing committee. 3 and 6 make up the product identification committee. They work with manufacturers and brokers to identify products that meet current federal regs. Region 4 comprises the quality control and assurance committee, and Region 7 comprises the marketing and menu development committee. So they are highly organized. They're broken into committees, and they divide and conquer the work so that it's a very efficient type of operation. Notice down here, there's an average cost savings of $87,533 to the 92 member districts. Their purchases reflect an excess of $117 million annually for food supplies and delivery fees for the 92 districts. Their cost savings, again, ranges from 5 to 21%. I gave you the average cost savings per district, anywhere from $62,078 to $108,227. Obviously, you know that cost can be translated then into a less per meal cost to the full pay students. So it's an important, obviously in a business transaction, it's important to control costs, and this procurement alliance allows them to do that. It's a much less administrative burden by doing this, and there's strength in number, and so I would say most of your districts are a member of the procurement alliance. They give all kinds of forms here, bid processes for products, bid product specifications. Then we talked about a little bit about dietary specifications in terms of fat content, sugar content, calorie content. So it gives you, they give some files here it would help you with some of that nutrition files. So I wanted to make sure you were aware of the Procurement Alliance, who they are, and the importance of being a member of that. I would recommend that. There are a number of laws that are regulated by the State Board of Education related to food school service, and they have a section here regarding that. General statutes, public law, different United States Department of Agriculture policy memos, federal regulations, state board policies, food nutrition services instruction, and OMB circulars from the federal government. I wanted to look under news and events, particularly for this issue of school meal nutrition standards. So if we'd go there for just a second. There's a number of great resources on this website. The control, much of the direction of the state level school food service departments are led, of course, by the USDA requirements. So they have a link to USDA website. So we'll go there for just a second. Here they talk about school meals, nutrition standards for school meals, different policies that are related to that. So we just look down through here a little bit. They've got resources on different meat alternatives, grains, milk, you name it, it's covered. So there's different technical assistance and guidance materials, tools for schools, certification of compliance and meal requirements, food buying guide for school meal programs. This is on the USDA website. Calories in school meals is a fact sheet. So just any number of resources that would help you as you try to determine the condition, success of your school nutrition department within your school district. So we'll leave that for the moment. May come back to some of this, but please be aware of the USDA Food and Nutrition Service site here. So we'll go back. I think it's important for you to understand the importance of supporting your staff, hiring the right people. It's obvious that you hire a director of food service that's highly skilled, credentialed, interested, etc. So they've given a number of standards when you hire these folks. So I wanted to go here for this conversation for professional standards for school nutrition professionals. Now, there are different levels of professionals, and they try to cover that thoroughly, whether it's at the state level, the district level, or at the school level. We'll go back to we'll go to this one, not back. We'll go to the final rule on professional standards. This is related to the Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act of 2010, wherein they established minimum professional standards for school nutrition personnel. So I don't know if you realize that this was a big part of that act in 2010, but it was. And then this is a rather lengthy document, but there's a table of contents. They talk about hiring standards, training standards, oversight by the SFA, the School Food Authorities. SFA stands for School Food Authorities. Annual training requirements, hiring requirements for state agencies, annual training requirements for state, and it takes it on down eventually to the district and school level. State agency directors, for example. So all right, for example, here's a school nutrition program director by your district size. If you'll look here just briefly, and this would be be your school district level director. The minimum education standards, if your school district has a student enrollment of 2499 or less, there's a bachelor's degree or equivalent educational experience with academic major, or concentration in food and nutrition, food service management, dietetics, family and consumer sciences, nutrition, education, culinary arts, business, or a related field. So that gives you the expectation for the educational level of your district director. It's a larger district, up to 9,999. It's very similar to that one. It gives you related experiences or the bachelor's degree. So it's pretty similar, and it also goes to the associate's degree. If you're in a larger district, it's very similar. But in a larger district, they would not accept, for example, the associate's degree, which is not listed here, and that's because they would not accept it in a large district. If you're over 25,000 students, it says the same requirements as the 10 to 24/9. So these two, you would have to have the experience equivalent or the bachelor's degree. So there are hiring standards that they talk about here, minimum educational standards. And that's for the different school food authorities, directors. We in here in North Carolina, we call them the child nutrition directors. They refer them to here as SFA directors. So a great amount of information there about the expectation for knowledge as you hire these people. Talks about annual training in this section as well. So I'll leave you to spend some time with that. Talks about record keeping as related to professional standards. It's important to keep up with who's been trained and how. In the school food authority oversight, there has to be a deliberate, intentional method of keeping up with that. So we'll leave that for now. This, oh, by the way, I did mention this, but this is contained in the Federal Register of the United States government. So this is an official document. And this is shown as the final rule on the Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act of 2010. We'll go to USDA professional standards. It's very similar to what you looked at. Here's some professional standards, training guidelines. Here's from the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction, summary of required minimum continuing ed. So let's visit there for just a second. This is a good overview sheet. If you're a director or administrator, you're required to have 8 hours minimum continuing ed hours. Beginning in 16-17, that moves to 12 hours. So superintendents, please be aware of that. Principals, be aware of your own school food service directors as needing this section here, the manager, which would be your school site managers. They're required to have 6 hours minimum continuing ed units and 10 hours after 16-17, or beginning rather in 16-17. And then your school cafeteria workers are required to have 4 hours and 6 hours in 2 years from now. You understand that we have a number of part-time school nutrition workers, and they're required to have 4 hours both now and in the future, beginning in 16-17. So just be aware that they are specific and intentional in most states, and here in North Carolina, as you see, with what's required for the professional training. Let's look at professional standards for learning. Here's a number of things that they will talk about. 1,000 sections called nutrition. Talks about meal planning, menu planning, things that they have to be able to do. Plan menus that meet USDA nutrition requirements for reimbursable meals, including calculating meal components. The employee should be able to do all these things. Utilize local food sources, farm to school, the movement to get fresh vegetables and fruits. Write standardized recipes and use the food buying guide. Analyze menus with the school meal pattern requirements. Plan meals for accommodating students with special diets. We've talked about the administrator's role. I've given you a document on your blackboard regarding the administrator's role in specialized diets for students with different handicaps or food types of requirements. So that's a legal requirement here in terms of their training. There needs to be a plan for, they need to be able to plan for effective use of USDA foods. They need to understand that nutrition education, age-appropriate nutritional activities. We've not talked about that, but your local school site director is charged from time to time to educate in your classrooms children and their teachers regarding nutritional requirements and the way to select good nutrition. So that's addressed here. Integrate nutrition education curriculum with your school nutrition program. Utilizing your cafeteria as a learning environment. And I'm sure you've seen evidence of that in your schools, and I would encourage you to monitor that from time to time and use them as a very vital resource. Think about it. One of the greatest things we can do for our children is to teach them good nutrition, because we clearly understand that what we eat and put into our bodies affects our health. The way we feel in terms of our health affects everything else that we do, and it obviously affects lifespan, etc. So perhaps one of the best things we could do as educators is to pursue and push this notion of nutrition education. I hope you're doing that as a school leader, and I would encourage you as a district leader to do that as well. These cafeteria workers have to have a great understanding of food production. And remember, they're not preparing small meals. They're preparing meals often for hundreds of students at a time. So they need to have a very clear understanding of those processes, how to prepare the food with standardized recipes, how to increase that proportionately, keep up with food production records, how they use and care for equipment, understanding child nutrition labeling, etc., so forth and so on. Once you prepare the food, it's important as to how it's served, as far as portion size. We talk about that down here, portion of foods. We've mentioned offer versus serve already, with the opportunity to choose certain things on the line as long as they meet the conditions that would qualify that meal for a reimbursable meal with the federal standards. Reminder, we've discussed the fact that your school cafeterias, school food service, depends heavily on the federal reimbursement of the free and reduced reimbursable meal. So appearance matters, food quality matters, the way you move the students through serving lines matters. All that is addressed here. The point of sales is addressed here. Obviously, part of the training and migration of workers up the food chain in your advancement process for workers means that they will eventually partake in cash management, checking students through the line, etc. So they need to have an understanding of those concepts: reimbursable meals, accounting for the money, doing the record keeping, etc., so forth. Purchasing and procurement is a key manager's key responsibility. Your workers need to have some knowledge of that in terms of helping generate supply orders. So the number of things that food service management has to be familiar with: product specifications, bid solicitation and evaluation. Obviously, this is taken care of more at the district level as far as the bidding. Receiving and storage, Quite often you'll have schools that do not have adequate freezer space, for example. So you need to have a clear understanding of what's available in terms of school sites and district level sites, especially related to USDA. United States Department of Agriculture will send commodity goods in from time to time to all school districts in terms of quite often certain meats, certain cheeses, potatoes, vegetables, a lot of times gallon cans of fruit, vegetables, etc. So having the ability to store those items is extremely important. And that becomes a finance issue for discussion between your school food service director and your finance director and your superintendent. Food safety is mentioned here. So just a number of things that in your training you have to make sure people are very much aware of. Communications and marketing, we talked a little bit about that. Your cafeterias need to be clearly marked in terms of the food that's being served. There needs to be advertisements, posters, making mealtime a pleasant time, an enticing time in terms of the selection of the best choices. So it talks about those things here. Smarter lunchroom techniques, customer service has to be of paramount importance. Promoting your program so that your participation rates are high. So professional standards here for state personnel, that's the Hungry Free Kids Act we just talked about. There's the standards for education. There's the annual continuing ed units. So strong document here that I think will be of help to you. So I think we'll leave that for a little bit. Just briefly look at the different programs here and be familiar with the acronyms. They have information about all of these: the National School Lunch Program, Federally Assisted Meal Program, School Breakfast Program, After School Program. If you run a after school program, I'm sure you're already familiar with the fact that those snacks also have to adhere to specifications provided by the school food service folks. Fresh Fruit and Vegetables Program, FFVP. If you run summer programs, there are a couple of different programs that are offered. Special Milk Program, SMP. So all of these are, in North Carolina at least, are specialized programs that you need to be familiar with. Let's look at this National School Lunch Program for a minute. Program fact sheet talks about what it is. Operating over 100,000 public and non-public, non-profit private schools. Congress expanded the National School Lunch Program in '98 to include reimbursement for snacks served to after-school kids. It administers the program at the federal level. We've discussed this. Anytime you're messing with federal money, you have to, and you should, manage it well, precisely, follow the regs exactly as they're provided. So just a good handout here talking about the National School Lunch Program. Now, notice this here, this is important. We've spent a little time, but not much. Most of the support USDA provides to schools in the National School Lunch Program comes in the form of a cash reimbursement for each meal served. That's why it's so important that that meal that the child picks up has those 3 vegetable requirements or whatever the requirements might be. We talked about that last time. Here's the way they will reimburse you as a district. For free lunches, they will reimburse $2.93. If it's a reduced price lunch, meaning the child pays, it's still 40 cents, I believe, which makes sense here. If you look at the $2.93 minus $2.53, it's 40 cents. And even for your paid lunches, the federal government provides 28 cents as an equalizer to helping you produce that quality food. Your snacks, reduced snacks and paid snacks, which will be relative to your before and after school care programs. We looked last week at the importance of following these regulations very closely in terms of the point of sale, recognizing who is free and who's reduced, and getting the reimbursable meal defined clearly so that your tellers know that and they keep up with the right record. So if you want to get in trouble fast and go to jail pretty quickly, then report these kind of things incorrectly. And if it can be shown, especially if it was intentional, your district could stand to lose thousands upon thousands of dollars. So you as a leader, make sure you understand what your site directors are doing, but more importantly, what your district level director is doing. Make sure they have a clear grasp of their expectations of the federal government, that they have clear record keeping in place. They have the support in terms of software and computers, et cetera, that are needed to do their information management well. What other types of support do schools get from USDA? They get what they call entitlement foods here. It says a value of 23.25 cents for each meal served. They can also get USDA bonus foods, and that's the surplus agricultural stocks that we talked about already. The types of foods here, it doesn't give specifically, but it calls it bonus foods. I've already mentioned the meat, cheese, fruits, vegetables, etc., that are canned. So just a good overview sheet of the program on the National School Lunches. Look at just briefly at the information systems. This talks about the verification. We'll visit there for just a second. And I don't know, I'm not familiar with this, so I'm going to back out of it. Sorry about that. Go back down on the right here. Not mention much about local wellness policies. We did briefly mention that last week, but make sure that your district is involved with the creation of wellness policies, that they typically have a multidisciplinary team with your school nurse and your different health and PE teachers and folks like that from the community as well to help you create your wellness policies. I've already mentioned nutrition education in your classrooms and things like that. Let me visit civil rights for just a minute. You should notice this poster because it clearly has to be placed in your cafeterias. So make sure that is occurring. They're very, very serious about these issues of civil rights for school nutrition programs. So there's a number of resources and forms here that are available to you, different posters. The compliance worksheet, let's visit that for just a little bit. This would help you determine if you're in compliance. They have a list of things here as the complete non-discrimination statement included on the parent letter and all printed materials. You're very familiar with that, I'm sure. Have any complaints of discrimination been received? If it's a yes, then have they been acted upon according to the procedure? Is the non-discrimination poster displayed at the point of sale, the point of service? Is program information made available to major employers contemplating layoffs? We've not talked about that. Are program materials printed in a language other than English if needed? That's very important. Do admission procedures restrict enrollment by minority persons? If so, you're in violation. Are disabled students, including those with special dietary needs, provided program benefits as appropriate? So just a good checklist for you to have. Okay, let me see if I can get back to where I need to be. I've spent some time talking about eligibility, but I wanted to go there. And let's look here. This document. This talks about, this is the law behind the USDA funding regulations for the food and nutrition. So it's the directions that your district level director would have to read and understand. There's a chart somewhere that gives you the amount of money that households can make. I'm trying to see if it's in this document as well. If not, we'll go back and find it somewhere else. We talked a little about last week, verification, notification of families, and making sure the process is clear and followed in terms of the information that you record, address, number in the household, social security numbers, so on and so forth. So that's just very important directives there. Maybe this is what I need. Yes, here's the chart on the eligibility standards, what the income can be if you have a household size. Typically it wouldn't be just one person. You wouldn't have a child living alone. You could have a homeless child that typically you've got a household size of at least two. Their annual income for two could be, if they made less than $20,709, they would qualify as free. If they made less than $29,471, they would qualify as reduced lunch, which would be the 40 cents that they would pay. And that's an annual fee. They break it down to monthly amounts of salary. So some people are paid monthly, some are paid twice per month, some are every 2 weeks. Twice per month would be 24 paychecks a year. Every 2 weeks would be 26 paychecks a year. So they try to cover all the situations, and some people get paid every week. So they're given the minimums that or the max rather, that you can make and still qualify. If you have more than 8 people in the household, then they've given an add-on for the amount of dollars you add to this last figure. So your food service director knows this, follows this, uses it to guide, and every year a new chart would come out that would provide for the parameters of becoming eligible for free or reduced pricing on the meals. So be familiar with that. So I mainly wanted to make sure that you had a pretty good grasp of the amounts of things that are on this site. Menu planning and production. We spent a little bit of time last week with that. 2 great PowerPoints here, what's for breakfast, what's for lunch. So let me click on this, maybe end up with this. Get it to pull up. About 15 seconds to go. It's always amazing to me just how hard cafeteria workers do work, investment of their efforts, and sometimes to the demise of their health. And I hope that you appreciate those people. So this is a PowerPoint provided by NCDPI in 213. So we'll flip through that as a kind of a ending point. We've talked quite a bit about this. There's 5 meal components that you see there, and there's amounts of those meal components. And there's a typical lunch plate. There's the lunch patterns. Typical high school meal. You see your vegetables and your fruit, your meat, your milk, your whole wheat bread. That's a whole wheat roll. That's a very good representation of a reimbursable meal. We talked about the daily requirements versus weekly requirements. There are weekly minimums that you have to meet. A variety of vegetables. Remember, the color of the vegetable does matter over the weekly pattern, especially. There's a typical K5 weekly offering that you've got to have collectively created this amount of consumption for the fruit, vegetable, grain, meats, and milk, the 5 areas. So the takeaway from this perhaps is the fact that your food service managers at your sites and your director at your district level have got to be expert planners, and you as a district supporter have got to understand the finances behind that and procuring the goods and providing for the facility and the equipment, so on and so forth. 6-8 offerings, little difference in the amount of consumption. Fruit here, 2.5 cups. K5, 2.5 cups. Look at the high school. This is the K8 and the 912. All that's still 5 cups. If you look at the meat, it goes up a little bit in the high school, 10 to 12 ounces. K8 would be 9 to 10 for meats. The 6-8, for example, is 9 to 10. The elementary is 8 to 10 on the meat. So just a little difference, but you have to keep up with that if you're managing the records and production. For dietary specifications, we've talked quite a bit about this, but keeping all this under check is a big task. Calories, fat, sodium, and trans fats, saturated fat and trans fat. Trans fats on a daily requirement. Saturated fats on a weekly amount. There's your calorie count we've looked at. Grains, meats, cups, meal components, milk, grains. We've talked a lot about this already, so I'm going to flip through it pretty quick. Whole grains, at least half of whole grains offered at lunch must be whole grain rich. Serving size, be at least one. This is about whole grains again. Milk, there's a variety issue we talked about. Notice USDA Foods offers a variety of no salt added or lower sodium products. Method of preparation does not change the subgroup. So here's your subgroups, the different colors. An eighth of a cup is a very small amount. It's a minimum credible amount. For uncooked leafy greens, 1 cup credits as a half cup. Obviously, because it can be, if it were processed and mashed up, it would not be as full as the cup. Legumes can be credited as a vegetable or a meat, but 1 serving not credited as both during the same meal, so you can't get double credit. So just a different listing there. It's amazing how much your cafeteria workers have to know. You have to be good nutritionists. Portion size and component contribution are always the same. That goes back to this issue of raw vegetables. When you puree them or chop them up, the size changes. So you have to know how the prep occurs. So won't bore you with that more, but just know that your people are paying close attention to these issues. And here's a typical sample weekly effort to get the fruit at the correct amount. Keep in mind, again, they're looking at calories, salt, sugar, saturated fat, trans fat. Meats, same kind of things. And then your milk. So we've looked at that already. So we'll stop there. Let's see, I think I'm about finished with what I wanted to show you tonight. Not talked much about equipment and facilities, but it's important when you think about new schools to properly equip them, and they do give you some rather good guidance here on purchasing and its introduction to equipment, purchasing, facility design. We don't think we visited this, but as you design a new school, there are resources here to help you do that. Equipment purchasing. This is from the National Food Service Management Institute, University of Mississippi. This is a really good document. I have looked through it. It's a long document. Notice there's 280 pages, and obviously we won't march through that. But I would, and I think I think I loaded this on your Blackboard as a good resource, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure I did 2 weeks ago. So I would encourage you to look through that. Extremely thorough document. There's a bit of table of contents. Understanding equipment and design, the planning team for that, bidding on equipment, specific equipment choices depending on what you're trying to do. So if you wanted to gain a real good education, all these are chapters about these areas. There's 16 chapters in this manual. Extremely important information: food prep, cooking equipment, ovens and ranges, skillets, broilers, fryers, steam equipment, refrigeration is an issue. Serving equipment, cleaning equipment, utensils, trays, software, everything you could ever want to know about equipping a good school cafeteria, kitchen, and serving line would be found in this document as noted. So I'll end with that. I appreciate you tuning in, and please understand the importance of your child nutrition department and the people that work there. Give them a pat on the back. I don't know that I've told you this, but my mother was a cafeteria worker. Ended up being a school cafeteria manager in a small elementary school the last 10 years or so of her career. And so I have a special place in my heart for school food service folks. They work really hard and provide for us extremely important service. And when you think about it, like I've said, nothing can be more important than the health of our children. And obviously nutrition is a major, if not the major factor in our children's health. So take it serious, be good leaders, and support those folks. Thank you.